Hello and welcome back to another Router Guides video. My name's Humphrey. We're going to continue using ChatGPT's Advanced Voice, this time for a mock salary negotiation. You go to interview, you knock it out of the park, you answer all their technical questions, you pass the technical interview, the initial screen, everyone likes you, they want to hire you, you want to work for them. Kind of the last part is, you got to sign on the dotted line and agree to a number. I hate it. Everyone hates this part because you don't do it a lot. The power is a bit skewed because a lot of times, like if you haven't worked somewhere for a while and you need money and you have a family, you have bills to pay, it kind of sucks because you just want a job and you want a fair salary. But of course, the work is not, they're going to try their best to cheap out, right? They want the salary as low as possible. Hey, let's do a mock salary negotiation. You will be the hiring manager for a tech firm that's based in San Francisco. You're going to try to get the salary and the benefits as low as possible, but I will try to get the salary as much as possible, more benefits, more equity, and I've also done very, very well on the interviews. I've passed all the phases. I passed the initial interview, I've passed a tech screen, I've passed multiple subsequent interviews, and everyone likes me. And I also have an extensive history with the YouTube channel, with the meetup group. I know also I am coming in with a recommendation from a C-level executive. Be very tough on this salary negotiation. Do not be cordial, but do not be too nice.
All right, let's dive into this. As the hiring manager, I'm pleased with your interview performance and the strong recommendation you have. We're prepared to offer you a position with a competitive salary of $120,000 per year, along with our standard benefits package, which includes health insurance, a 401k plan, and 3 weeks of paid vacation.
I really enjoyed talking to the tech team, and I really enjoyed talking to the other departments. I think I definitely like the team. I think we're a good fit. As far as the salary is concerned, I've done my research on San Francisco and Silicon Valley in large. I also have many friends that work there, and I also used to work out of the San Francisco Cisco Meraki office, so I know how expensive things can be living in San Francisco. The $120,000, is that, I gotta ask, is that total compensation or is that just the base salary?
I'm glad to hear you enjoyed the process and feel like a good fit with the team. The $120,000 is the base salary. We understand the cost of living in San Francisco is high, so we're open to discussing additional components of the compensation package, such as equity and bonuses, to better meet your expectations.
Okay, that sounds good. I guess we'll just do it in order. Instead of getting to the equity and the bonuses, let's agree on a base salary and go from there.
That sounds like a good plan. Given your experience and the value you'd bring to the team, what were you hoping for in terms of base salary?
I came from Cisco and I had a very high base salary and very high OTE, much higher than what you guys are offering. And given that this is going to be San Francisco, and also the value I bring to your company, not only do I bring you 7 years of sales engineering experience with huge customers, enterprise level customers, close several million, 20, 30, $40 million deals, along with I can bring YouTube channel experience, I can get your enablement up, I can get your training up. Love to train both internal and external customers. So I think instead of just getting one employee, you're pretty much getting 2 or 3 different employees in one package. So for base salary, I say let's start off at 160.
I appreciate your comprehensive approach and the additional value you bring. While $160,000 is above our initial range, your unique skill set and the multiple roles you can fulfill are indeed impressive. How about we meet in the middle at $140,000?
That sounds kind of low, although if we were to go with 140,000, let's talk about equity.
Fair enough. Let's discuss equity. We offer stock options as a part of our compensation package. Given your experience and the level of responsibility you'll have, we can offer a grant of stock options that vests over 4 years with a 1-year cliff. The exact number of shares would depend on the current valuation, but we're thinking in the range of 0.05% equity.
How about 1%?
I see where you're coming. 1% is quite substantial, especially considering our current stage. However, given your strong background and the multiple hats you'll wear, we could potentially go up to 0.5% equity. This would be a significant part of your total compensation, reflecting the value we see in your contributions.
Okay, let's leave that on the table. We'll come back to that. I appreciate the conversation about the equity. Let's try to nail down the commission part. So I know for other sales engineering jobs, especially back at Cisco and Cisco Meraki, I was at a 70-30 split, so 70 base and 30% commission. Would it be a similar split with you guys?
A 70-30 split is standard in many tech firms, and we can offer a similar structure. With a base of $140,000, your on-target earnings, OTE, would include an additional 30% for commissions, totaling $42,000. This would bring your OTE to $182,000, assuming you hit your targets. Does that align with your expectations?
Yeah, OTE of 182 for San Francisco is very, very low. I mean, that's going to be really tough because there are 1-bedrooms in San Francisco. Even with the roommate, they're talking about $3,500 to $4,000 and up per month just for a small 1-bedroom. So that's about, let's say, $48,000, $50,000 a year just on rent. So yeah, even looking at a base salary of 140, OTE of around 180, 190, that sounds pretty low for San Francisco.
I understand the cost of living in San Francisco is a significant factor. Considering your concerns, we could explore increasing the commission component or adding a signing bonus to bridge the gap. We want to ensure you're comfortable with the overall package. How does that sound?
Well, let's talk about a signing bonus. If I'm going to move to San Francisco, I'm assuming you guys would want me to move. I've got no problem with that. Currently, I live in Bangkok, Thailand, but I also have a house in Phoenix, Arizona. But not a problem for me to move to San Francisco. However, most of the apartments would require a either 1 or 2 month deposit along with paying the rent ahead of time. So it'd probably be somewhere around 2.5, 3 months worth of rent. And if we're talking about $4,000 on the rent, that's potentially $10,000, $12,000 upfront.
Relocating to San Francisco is indeed a big step, and we want to make it as smooth as possible for you. We could offer a signing bonus to help cover those initial relocation costs. A bonus in the range of $10,000 to $15,000 would provide substantial support for your move. Would that work for you?
How about $15,000 for the signing bonus?
Let's go with $15,000 for the sign-in bonus. We want to ensure you feel supported in making this transition. With that settled, let's revisit the equity and commission structure to round out your compensation package. How does that sound?
It's going to take me a little while to find an apartment. You know, when I made the move to Singapore, it took me a couple weeks to find the place. And what Cisco did is they put me up in a hotel for a couple weeks. I think that's probably going to be very similar to San Francisco, some type of temporary corporate lodging while I get an apartment.
That makes sense, given the challenges of finding a place in San Francisco. We can arrange for temporary corporate housing for a few weeks to give you time to find a suitable apartment. We'll cover the costs for this period to ensure a smooth transition. How does that arrangement sound?
Yeah, I think I could probably find something within 2 weeks, but how about we make it 3 weeks just to be safe?
3 weeks of temporary corporate housing sounds reasonable. That should give you ample time to find a suitable place without feeling rushed. We'll cover the costs for that duration to ensure you can focus on settling in comfortably.
Okay, let's agree to that.
Great, we have an agreement then. 3 weeks of temporary corporate housing, a $15,000 signing bonus, and we've got a good foundation on the base salary, commission, and equity. I'm glad we could find a package that works for you.
Okay, and now let's go back to the equity portion. I think we last were talking about, somewhere around zero point 0.5. I wanted 1%. How about 0.75?
Let's see if we can find a middle ground. 0.75% equity is a substantial stake. Considering your contributions and the impact you'll have, we're willing to stretch to 0.6%. This reflects our recognition of your value while balancing our equity pool. How does that sound?
Let's make it 0.7.
Let's meet at 0.7% equity. We value your expertise and the roles you'll play in our growth, and this reflects that commitment.
Okay, let's agree to the 0.7% equity.
Fantastic. We have a deal. 0.7% equity. I'm glad we could come to an agreement that reflects your value and contributions. We're excited about the prospect of having you on board.
Okay, and I guess the main part now, let's get back to the OTE portion and also the base salary. Yeah, the 140 base is still pretty low. I think for San Francisco, I looked at a couple of the competitive salary charts, and I saw that around 180 is a average base salary for San Francisco for this sales position.
I understand where you're coming from. A base salary of $180,000 is on the higher end for this role. Given your strong background and the competitive market in San Francisco, how about we consider a base of $150,000 with a slightly higher commission structure to boost your OTE?
Still sounds pretty low, but how about we do 165?
Let's aim for $165,000 for the base salary. With that, we can maintain a commission structure that allows you to achieve a strong OTE. This adjustment reflects the competitive landscape and your expertise. How does that sound?
I will agree to 165 if I can have a salary review at the 6-month mark. And if I'm doing well, let's aim to bump that to potentially 180 or a higher number, but that will be at the 6-month mark.
That sounds like a fair arrangement. We can agree to a base salary of $165,000 with a formal salary review at the 6-month mark. If your performance meets or exceeds expectations, we'll aim to adjust your salary accordingly. This approach rewards your contributions and aligns with your goals.
Okay, let's agree to that. And then let's talk about any extra benefits. You mentioned the 401k match along with all the health insurance. So I think the health insurance should be pretty standard for most tech companies in that area, but just seeing if there's any specifics or advantages with the healthcare that you guys offer, the health coverage that you guys offer versus others in the area.
Absolutely. Let's go over the benefits. Our health insurance package is comprehensive, covering medical, dental, and vision, with multiple plan options to fit different needs. We offer a competitive 401k plan with company matching up to 4% of your salary. In addition, we provide life and disability insurance, generous parental leave, and wellness programs. Our benefits are designed to support a healthy work-life balance and overall well-being.
Okay, let's end the mock salary negotiations part of this, and tell me what I did correctly in this salary negotiation.
You did several things well in the negotiation. First, you clearly communicated your value, highlighting your experience and unique skills. You backed up your salary requests with solid reasoning. Second, you were prepared with market research, knowing the typical salary ranges for your role in San Francisco, which strengthened your position. Third, you were flexible and willing to discuss different components of the compensation, such as base salary, bonuses, and equity. This showed you're looking for a well-rounded package. Finally, you negotiated for future considerations, like a 6-month salary review, which is a smart way to ensure long-term satisfaction with your compensation.
Okay, and what could I have done better?
Here are a few areas for improvement. Concrete examples of your past achievements and their impact could strengthen your position even further. Second, you might have explored other benefits earlier, such as professional development budgets, extra vacation days, or flexible working arrangements, adding more dimensions to your compensation package. Lastly, it's important to set the tone early for a collaborative approach, aiming for a win-win outcome, which can sometimes get lost in the back and forth of negotiating specific numbers.
Okay, so you can see how a salary negotiation goes with the ChatGPT Advanced Voice. A couple observations here. It tends to be very verbose. So you saw that at several times it mentioned, we're glad to have you, aboard, and thank you for your skills, etc., etc. So it was like several times during the negotiation, there was an extra 3 to 4 sentences of just blah, 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 blah. What you want to do every time when you do this is ask it what you did right and what you did wrong. One of the points where it said I did wrong is I didn't have enough details about my past experience. I purposely did not get into too much of the past experience and the exact wins and how I did it, because I know this video is going out to the public, so we don't want the competition of Cisco to get that information, and that would be potentially catastrophic. Collaborative approach, I did think, at first I was thinking, well, I was being collaborative, but the more I think about it is, yeah, the setting the tone of like, hey, I want to work for you guys want me to work for you, now we're just working on the specifics, right? And I think if I would have hit that tone a little bit more, yeah, I think there was a point where I got a little bit, maybe, I don't want to say combative, but it was almost like my way or the highway type of thing. I'm looking for this and only this. If you were to pay top dollar for everyone, it would be nuts. But on the other hand, if you paid top dollar for everyone and you got the top talent, isn't that value in itself? You actually got those people for cheap if you're actually getting the top people in the industry. Damn, I should have. A little out of practice, I probably should have said that. All right, Humphrey with Router Guides coming with you with another ChatGPT Advanced Voice video. If you have any questions, put them at the bottom. And as always, stay safe, take care, and talk to you later. Bye.